Let me know.
You're good now.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to the East Bay Regional Park District Border Operations Committee. This is June 18th, 2020, and it is approximately 12:33 in the afternoon. And we are meeting and pursuant to Governor Newsom's executive order number N29-20 and the Alameda County Health Officer's current shelter in place order effective June 5th, 2020. And the East Bay Regional Park District headquarters will not be open to the public, and the Border Operations Committee and staff will be participating in the meetings via phone/video conferencing. And Madam Secretary Denise, could you read how the members of the public can listen in to the meeting?
I sure can.
Thank you.
Okay. For members of the public, you may join via YouTube at https://UTU.be/LOA3R7QGQ. And again, if you wish to have a public comment for any of these items, you may join the Zoom link at https://zoom.us/zoom.91428127616. This information can also be found on the Park District website under the Board Operations Committee meeting agenda.
Great, thank you. Madam Secretary, would you please take the roll?
Okay, roll call. Director Waspy?
Here.
Director Rosario?
Here.
Director Wieskamp?
Here. Great. All board of directors are accounted for. And so I'd like to, before we kick off this meeting, I'd like to acknowledge the original stewards of this land, the native Ohlone people, and the tribe that covered the East Bay was the Huchian. And I just want to express my gratitude and the Park District's gratitude in their stewardship and our commitment to the stewardship, continuing stewardship of the land as well. So with that, we have the review of the Girl Scouts of Northern California, Briones Regional Park.
Tiffany, this is yours.
Great. Okay. Good afternoon. I am getting a message that says I have disabled the participant screen sharing.
So we need Ruby or Denise.
I'll be right with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
While we've got a couple of minutes, I think we also have the Park Supervisor Joe Miller with us, and the Unit Manager Dan Cunning are also joining us for this item, I believe. I think I saw Joe.
Excellent. Welcome to both of you.
And we may be joined later by Jim Reuter, a representative of Girl Scouts of Northern California. I don't see that he's joined us yet, but he may join us today.
Okay, please try again, Tiffany.
Okay, one moment. Great, I believe that's all right. Great, wonderful. All right, good afternoon, Chair Rosario and committee members. I'm Tiffany Margalisi, Business Services Manager for the Park District, and I'm here to present the item on the special use agreement for the Girl Scouts of Northern California, which is part of Briones Regional Park. For all of the committee members and audience, I always give a brief overview of what special use agreements are. I'll give some background on this particular lease, the terms, and our recommendation. Special use agreements are agreements that they have to meet the district objectives with appropriate public benefit and priority. Special use, and according to our policy, is defined as any kind of ongoing recreational development, activity, service, or land use that's provided for a group and general public benefit by clubs, associations, or similar groups operating as a nonprofit entity with membership which is generally open to the public. And so we have about 25 or more of these types of agreements, and they range from all types of activities, from archery, swimming, equestrian, scouting, horticultural, and the one that we are going to review today is for the Girl Scouts of Northern California. Here's an overview map of Briones Park, and you can see the red circle at the lower half of the screen gives you an orientation to where this lease area can be found within Briones. And then here's a zoomed in shot of what the Girl Scout lease area is. It's the yellow outline hatch area, the lease area, and it's adjacent to the Twin Canyon Girl Scout Camp, which is owned by the Girl Scouts. This area is known as the Buckeye Ranch property, and it's located at the end of Spring Hill Road in Lafayette. Spring Hill Road does become a one-lane private road near this border of Briones, and we have access to use the road along with the other adjacent land. Some background on this lease of the Girl Scouts. The Girl Scout camp at Twin Canyons was established in 1963. And then quite a bit later in 1995, the Park District acquired the Buckeye Ranch area of Briones. Then several years later in 1997, the Park District signed its first special use agreement with the Girl Scouts. It was just a 2-year use agreement, and it was only for 1.2 acres so that the Girl Scouts could establish a security residence site. Then in 1999, the Park District went through a planning process to do a land use plan amendment to incorporate the Buckeye Ranch area into the park, and that expanded the Girl Scout area to 4.5 acres. And so that is inclusive of a residence and then some recreation area, which we'll show the pictures of. This was a 20-year term. So we entered in I'm jumping ahead, but the second special use agreement was established in the year 2000 and was a 20-year term. So it is now ended. It ends June 21st, 2020. And so our recommendation is to enter into a new special use agreement. One of the improvements over the years that we have worked with the Girl Scouts on, and they've been leaders on, is improving the traffic, because they are at the terminus of Spring Hill Road, and anyone who's driven down there knows it can be very, it becomes very narrow. And also anyone who's ever attended a camp knows that everyone arrives and everyone leaves at the same time. So it results in quite a bit of traffic. And so what the Girl Scouts have done within their lease area, this is a aerial view of their lease area, and a very simple but effective solution. Now when cars come in at the beginning of day or end of day for drop off, they come in off of Spring Hill Road, and they just do this very simple loop around the security residence. This is the security residence. And then they can come through here, through the parking lot, they drop off, exit. And so while this didn't really, this was a very simple but very effective solution, and it's alleviated a lot of the neighbor concerns about traffic. So that's how they currently use the area. The security residence, this is an area where they have some archery and just kind of an open space. So the general lease footprint is something like this. This here is the access point, a trail access point, and over here's the restroom, public access here. And then the Girl Scout camp goes this way. Okay. So here's another view on Spring Hill Road coming past the access point. You see the security residence there. So as a requirement of this agreement, the Girl Scout employee must reside in the security residence, and then they perform all the functions a normal resident does. Their eyes and ears, they report violations, they complete maintenance projects. Business services staff, including myself and the park supervisor, did a site visit this year, and everything looks in good condition. So further, their terms is to maintain the loop road as I described, as that's been really beneficial. The current activities that they're allowed to do are archery. If the Girl Scouts wanted to in the future, they could use their use area for other activities such as a volleyball court, tetherball, play area, gathering area, outdoor education. But right now their plans are to continue the use as is. They don't propose any changes. So it'll continue to consist of archery and the security residence. So we propose a fee of $1,500 a year, and that would increase by 2% each year. Going back to the original agreement, it was $500 over time. With the increase of cost of living, it had increased to $1,200. And so just for simplicity, we would like to start the lease at a nice round number. So we'll start this one at $1,500, and it would increase by 2% every year with a 5-year term and a second 5-year term for a total of 10. So our recommendation is that we, staff would recommend that the board committee approve the Girl Scouts of Northern California at Briones with a second 5-year term at the district's sole discretion. And with that, I will pause and answer any questions.
Great. Any questions from my fellow board members? Director Wieskamp.
Have we talked to the Girl Scouts, and how do they plan to utilize this site this year? Are they going to be doing as much? I just wondered if we should consider something, a lower payment, if they're not going to be able to use it very much. Does anybody know? Are they not worried about it, so we don't?
Did Jim Reuter from the Girl Scouts join us?
No, he
No.
hasn't.
So that's a great question about their use. I had spoken to them quite a bit prior to COVID, and we had communicated about today's meeting. They've not requested any reduction. If they were to do so, the board had approved some 19 concessionaire and special use relief, so that staff has the ability to assess if they are in a hardship, what the public benefit is. And so we could do that as under the COVID financial relief authority if the Girl Scouts request that.
Okay, I think that's very important to let them know that's possible, because we're not sure how we're going to be using our facilities. It may be very difficult for them. I don't know, but that seems like a good way of handling it.
Thank you.
Director Waspy, do you have any questions?
Well, no, but Ann brings up a good point. If the county, their county, it's Contra Costa, right, allows them to open up in a way that's not in the way the park district feels they should open up, who's in the driver's seat on that one?
Huh. Oh.
I mean, if they wanted to have
Who's the approving authority?
an event that's not in keeping with what we're doing in our parks, if they wanted to have an event, and by definition, a gathering. What if they wanted to have a Girl Scout Jamboree, which the 150 Girl Scouts? Who would be
the bulk of the camp is private property owned by the Girl Scouts. So that would be the liability would be the Girl Scouts of America, and they'd have to work that out with the county. And so that wouldn't fall on us necessarily. In fact, I don't think we want to take on that role of approving that, since the bulk of the camp is not on our property.
Okay, but the CXT restroom out there is ours, and do they use that specifically, or is that for the staging area?
Yeah, that's for the entrance to the park. It's not used by the camp. They have quite nice facilities that are up under the woods there, where you can see any of the pictures they have. It's actually quite a nice camp.
And then I have a question regarding the archery. They're allowed to do archery, and I was curious as to why the city of Alameda's day camp, they were prohibited after the year I retired. It's in 2014, because it was cited that it wasn't a designated area for archery. And the city of Alameda's day camp had been doing that archery event for over 30 years without incident. So I was curious as to why the Girl Scouts could have archery at their camp and not the city of Alameda.
A good question, and it is, just to clarify, it is a designated archery range. I don't know if I had the pictures, but it is an established range with safety perimeter fencing. So it is an established range, and it's something really specifically called out under their use agreement.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that clarification. Any other questions? Oh, I see Mr. Council, Carol Victor. Welcome.
Hi, Director. Thank you. Hi, Director Rosario. So I'm actually here on the next item, but you asked, Director Waspy asked a somewhat legal question, so I thought I'd weigh in, which is all of our special use agreements, all of our agreements with our concessionaires have a requirement that they follow all laws. So that would put the burden on them to follow the law, the public health orders. So we could certainly, if there was a gross violation of some sort, we do have some leverage, but typically we say that compliance with the health orders is the responsibility of the concessionaire.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Wieskamp, seconded by Director Waspy. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Director Wieskamp,
Aye.
Director Waspy,
Aye.
Director Rosario.
Aye. That is unanimous. Thank you so much. And then that brings us to our second item. The review of Redwood Canyon Golf Course lease amendment, Lake Chabot Regional Park.
So I'm just gonna say a few words introduction before I hand it off to Tiffany. I think most of you may recall back in 2014 is when the 50-year lease ended for the former Willow Park Golf Course. At that time, we had decided to go out to RFP. There was quite a bit of capital work needed at the golf course, and we went out to RFP twice. The first RFP process was intended to see if we could find a vendor who was willing to put in some capital funding to make repairs to the golf course and the related facilities. That was unsuccessful. It just wasn't part of the market of golf at that time in terms of investments. And then we entered into a management agreement with Touchstone Golf to manage the golf course while we were going through the RFP process. We went out through a second RFP process, and Touchstone Golf LLC was the successful candidate in that process, and they've continued on with us to today. You know, a lot of the challenges we had with the RFP process and moving forward with a vendor for this facility is the history of flooding that's occurred on this golf course. As you know, it sits in a bend in the creek, and it enters into Lake Chabot and Honker Bay. And over years, Honker Bay has silted in over time with silt coming down the creek and flowing through the golf course and settling in the Honker Bay area. The result is that there's a backup of water where the creek is flowing at high rates, and it floods the back nine of the golf course. This obviously is a challenge for any golf course operator because at that time you end up closing down half the golf course, and in some cases, as Tiffany is going to talk about, the entire golf course. So that issue of flooding had to be dealt with in the next vendor because as with most of our concessionaires, they're operating at a certain profit margin, and the closure period is a time of no revenue. So that was part of our negotiations and contract process as we went through this, and continues to this day until we do some work in the channel. At some point, we work with East Bay Mud to hopefully have a deep water channel, which will hopefully solve the problem long term. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany to talk about the current situation and the lease amendments that we're proposing.
Great. Thank you for that introduction. And I'm going to share out my screen again. Great. Thank you. So since we heard that introduction, I'm going to launch right again, Tiffany Margalisi, Business Services Manager for the Park District. And I want to thank and acknowledge Steve Harker, CEO of Touchstone Golf, and James Birchall, also from Touchstone, who are both here with us to answer questions after I give my overview. So I'll be talking again, I'll go through it quickly. AGM O'Connor gave a good overview of the lease background. Then to just have a good understanding, I'll go over the current terms of the lease, talk about this piece called force majeure, acts of God. And we've had a few of those lately that we're going to be talking about the impacts on the lease. We have some proposed changes, and then we get to end with all the exciting capital improvements that Touchstone has completed in just a short time since 2017 to really improve the conditions and playability of the course. So as AGM O'Connor introduced for us, we had in 2014 the end of a 50-year lease at Willow Park Golf Course, and then that segued into a management agreement with Touchstone Golf, who is now our operator. In the 2015-2016 timeframe, that's when we did our RFP, and Touchstone Golf was selected for the long-term operating agreement. And as was mentioned, this was a facility. It had a history of flooding, and just after the selection of Touchstone Golf, again, we had a major flood event in 2017. And here we see some aerial photos of what the course looked like. This is not a feature. This is heavy flooding here at the course, which is part of Lake Chabot in Castro Valley. Here's some more pictures. The event actually made the news. There was a banquet in progress. Evacuation had to occur. There was, you can see in the background, the main building and cars trying to exit and get everyone off of the property because the water was rising. So this context of flooding, distressed property, that happened as we were doing our contract negotiation. So I just wanted to that context. So when I talk about some of the terms of the lease, we know where that came from. So as a background to the lease, we have a 25-year lease with Touchstone. We're in the very early years. We're excited because we've already made a lot of progress. There are 3 types of fees that are paid under this lease. And one is a minimum rent. So there's a guaranteed $120,000 a year. Then there is a percentage rent. So after sales exceed a threshold, they pay at 10% of golf sales and 3% of food and beverage. And then the third is our concession maintenance fund. We call it CMF. All of our concessions have that. It's a very important source. The concessionaires pay into it, and then we can use that funds to continue to improve the facility. So that's 5%. So those are just the 3. We'll talk as we go about some buckets. So those are the 3 main buckets of fees that Touchstone pays. Then we get into 2 types of rent credit. And the first one is a capital rent credit. And what they do, because this was a distressed facility and there was a high need to really reinvest in the infrastructure to make this more viable in the long term as a business, Touchstone receives a capital rent credit, and they pay 20% of the rent due until they accumulate $600,000 of capital credit. And then in turn, by paying that reduced rate, they reinvest that in the course. And so it's a really win-win situation. Then the second type of rent credit we'll talk about is called we'll call it the force majeure rent abatement. And that's relates to acts of God. This is a unique clause for our concessions, but was really included as in response to the history of flooding at the course and the 2017 flooding. So what this force majeure rent abatement says is that there is a $3,000 a day rent abatement or rent reduction for a full closure of the course, and then a $2,000 a day rent abatement for a partial closure, which typically is the back 9 because that area is closer to the lake and that gets a little more saturated. So I'm gonna, let me know at any point if you want me to pause. I know this is a little, it's detailed. Okay, so then now we know the types of fees they pay. There's 2 types of credits. So in 2019, how did this play out? We had, in 2019, we had 30 days of closure. It was a combination of full and partial closures, mostly due to flooding, but some also due to the mandatory planned power outages from PG&E last fall. So between the full and the partial days, it was 30 days were closed in 2019. They, that would equate with that equation of $3,000 a day and for full closure, 2,000 partial closure, that adds up to $66,000 in force majeure rent abatement. So then this is where we go through the math then, is that here they had a rent due because they also have the capital. They're paying in these years, they're paying a very low rent. So it was a very low rent due because of the capital credit. Then they gathered due to closures, accumulation of $66,000 in force majeure. So they have a rent reduction that exceeded the amount of rent paid. So neither party had really anticipated this exact scenario, and we didn't really know at first exactly how to resolve this situation, because you can't reduce something more than you have. Luckily, we had very good conversations over many months with Touchstone, and have I think a good process for moving forward with this. And so this will be a change to the agreement language that we're looking for your approval. So if the closure rent credits exceed the current year rent credit, then the excess would be deducted from the capital investment, the $600,000 mandatory capital investment. So again, I like to see it very clearly laid out. So here we had Touchstone was going to do a $600,000 capital investment. We saw that there was a excess or force majeure rent abatement. So we are going to propose that we resolve that, reducing the amount of capital investment Touchstone is obligated to do. And I guess I'll just pause there just to see if that is making sense. Any questions?
Any questions from the board?
Okay.
Director Watson.
Yeah, my question would be about force majeure, and I don't know if Carol's still with us, but I sort of jokingly say this. I know Alex Coate, and I consider him a great person. I even would aspire some godlike qualities to him, the general manager of East Bay Mud. But is that really force majeure when it rains and East Bay Mud makes the determination they're going to close the spillway at Lake Chabot, let the water back up, and then release water, scheduled releases out of San Leandro Reservoir, which in fact flood the golf course? is that an act of God? Or, you know, just legally, can we do that? I know that Renee Viviani used to sue East Bay Mud unsuccessfully, but I mean, this is a real quantifiable loss of wages. And we, you know, if we are Touchstone's landlord, then theoretically East Bay Mud is our landlord.
So Dennis, I think
Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you hear? Okay.
You can still hear me?
Director, yes. So Director Waspy, with respect to whether this is an act of God or not, the language was specifically written to include flooding. We were negotiating this agreement. Touchstone was in a management capacity, and as the manager of the golf course, while we were negotiating a lease, as the manager, they experienced all these closures and all this flooding. So it was against that backdrop that we were negotiating it. And I think you'll recall at the time that what was expressed to us is that had they been in a lease with the Park District, they probably would have gone out of business because the flooding was such a huge impact on the business. So that was the backdrop which we negotiated it, and it definitely contemplated floods. As to what exposure East Bay Mud has for that, as the landlord, they certainly have an agreement that insulates them from these type of liabilities.
Well, you know, I'm never suggesting that Touchstone has done anything incorrectly, and I'm glad I'm very happy that they were stuck with us, in fact, when they didn't have to. But I'm wondering in the future, I mean, we do have liaison committees with East Bay Mud, and I would think that if for nothing else than to try to convince them and maybe leveraging it with suggesting that they might have some effect on why the place floods, that maybe we could time some of these discharges.
And I think Jim has something to say on that point. I will say that Tiffany has some good news along the flooding front as we move farther along in the presentation. And also we are generally looking at what else we can do to minimize it. And Mr. Viviani, right before Willow Park, the transition happened, Mr. Viviani actually sued the Park District for flooding, which resulted in a settlement and payment to Willow Park to conclude that litigation.
Jim.
I think another aspect, and I'm not sure if I heard Carol mention it, but I think in our lease agreement it also talks about that water operations take precedent over other uses. So I think that might fall Director Waspy in that concept that their flood control and water operations take precedent. So that's just another consideration that we have within our master lease.
Okay.
Director Wieskamp, do you have any questions so far?
So far, it seems to be handling as well as possible. I think we recently heard from Director Waspy that he was out on the course and saw a lot of other people enjoying themselves and doing it responsibly, right?
Yeah.
Not only right, I was there 3 hours ago, played 18 this morning, and it's incredibly, course is gorgeous. People are loving it, and it's crowded as heck.
So Mike, a question for Tiffany. This might come up, this may be coming up later in your presentation, but does force majeure cover closures from COVID-19?
Great segue. Thank you, Chairman Rosario. That really helps. So I'll proceed. Just then that brings us into 2020, which is a type of force majeure we didn't anticipate due to COVID-19. So in 2020, there were 48 days of closure. Now, on the bright side, none of those were due to flooding. And I'll talk about that because some of the improvements at the course have increased the playability there, even despite the 2019 rains. So on the downside, we did have 48 days of closure due to force majeure, COVID, And that resulted in $123,000 of this excess credit. We would use the same mechanism to resolve it. So again, on the next slide, we look at what the previous mandatory capital investment was, subtracting the excess of force majeure, and then we have a new capital investment amount of $433,155. Now, one of the things that we'll share when I talk about the capital improvements is that this is a reduction in the mandatory investment, but we are mutually committed, the Park District and Touchstone, to working together to get these projects done. It probably just will take a little bit of a longer time because we'll need to fund it through the CMF concession maintenance fund. But we still anticipate being able to make further improvements to the irrigation system and move forward. One of the things where we've had we call like an aha moment in thinking about this, the terms of this force majeure and the lease, is that the capital rent credit will sunset in late 2021. So this situation where we have a discounted rent and low rent, and then a force majeure that exceeds the rent, this is very unlikely to occur after 2021 when the rent credit, the capital credit sunsets. So that, in addition to the fact that COVID-19 is unprecedented, and then also we're improving the course so that there'll be less closures due to flooding potentially. That all seems very promising. So after the sunset of the rent credit, the rent would be higher, therefore unlikely that the closure credit would exceed the rent. I talked about the course improvements, and then just in this agreement, we're going to clarify that this mechanism that we've gone through and showed the board members, committee members, is what we would do to resolve the situation if this excess force majeure credit occurs again. We wouldn't do a cash payment. And then also we are committed to protecting CMF, the concession maintenance fund. We didn't want to pay out from that fund because that's very important in funding improvements to the course. So in addition, this is sort of the summary of what we're going to be doing with the Amendment 2. Number 1, we've talked about quite a bit already, force majeure. 2, course closure approval. 3, we're going to make some changes to the wedding garden ADA requirement. And I'm going to go through each one of these in detail. 4, the apartment use. And then 5, we're doing some administrative cleanup to the lease. So related to the course closure, since we do have this force majeure clause and we do have a course that's prone to flooding, we are establishing in the lease a notification process so that if there is an emergency closure, we have a very clear process for that, and we're committed to reopening as soon as possible. Regarding the wedding pathway, this area is through a sublease to Wedgewood Events, is used for weddings and has become increasingly popular in non-COVID-19 times for weddings. And so the Park District under the lease is required to bring this entire facility into compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that was to have been completed per the lease in March of 2020. And we mutually agreed to extend that for 1 year to 2021. One of the main reasons being that Wedgewood had already successfully booked a lot of events. And so we need to really think far ahead to find a work window to get the work done. So currently Touchstone is blocking off January 5th to February 12th, 2021 for the construction. And then that work will be spearheaded by our maintenance and skilled trades department. And they're just finalizing exactly what needs to be done in terms of bringing this into full compliance. There's also an apartment on site. The current lease doesn't allow for any use of the apartment, but we're going to clarify that the apartment can be used for short-term temporary use and that Touchstone will carry the appropriate insurance. And this apartment has been integral in getting projects completed. Touchstone uses a crew, irrigation crew that will come in and stay and live in the apartment Monday through Thursday or for a couple of weeks so that they can really come in and it's a win-win because they come in and they can get the work done very quickly and minimize disruption to the course. We'll also do some housekeeping items, just talking about how the CMF will work and doing some relabeling of exhibits. So nothing very exciting there. We just wanted to give you a heads up. Now to the exciting part, which is the improvements, capital improvements by Touchstone. Touchstone has already invested well over $369,000 in capital credit, has already been put back in the ground at the course. And this, you can just see the results when you go out there. And so they've done a phase 1 of the irrigation line in 2019, which was the entire main line for holes 1 through 9, and then irrigation on certain holes. This has multiple benefits because it reduces water consumption, it reduces energy consumption, which is good for the environment, which costs less, and also then is less prone to leaks and has less repairs. And so it's just reinvesting in the irrigation is such a, it just really has a domino effect in the positive sense of improving things. They've also, Touchstone has also completed over $400,000 of CMF projects. So concession maintenance fund projects, including banquet hall upgrades and drainage work. This picture you're looking at here is just after some drainage work. On the left, you see a drainage basin. They have someone called a shaper come out and do some basins to help with drainage. And then these, they look like bird feet. Those are drainage that will help drain into that basin. It's very, very simple, very effective. This was hydroseeded or grew back very quickly. And it was so exciting in 2019 to see the drainage basins working. So when we had rainy, wet days that in prior years would have closed parts of the course was able to stay open and playable. So that's over nearly $800,000 completed by Touchstone, probably more. Touchstone CEO Harker will, I'm sure, tell us he has more he's even completed. Here's another picture of one of the drainage basins on the back 9. So on the left is just after the shaper sort of just made a low-lying area. And then on the right is the what it looks like after hydroseeding, and then just grows back, looks like part of the course. Another strength of our relationship with Touchstone is that they're very nimble and are able to seize the opportunity. So almost immediately after the COVID-19 shelter in place took effect, Touchstone was contacting us to do more capital improvements while the course was closed. And they were able to mobilize very quickly. And so this is some work they completed in 2020, just during this last shelter in place. So anyway, it's just additional irrigation improvements to different holes, going hole by hole, getting everything up to modern standards. Pictures of irrigation, and they have a machine that pulls the irrigation under the ground. It's pretty cool. I got to see that working. Here's the machine pulling in the irrigation pipes. Also, so that's all that's been done. And then looking forward to the future, due to the 2017 storms, that was a major federally declared disaster. We are still working with FEMA on approvals for somewhere between $2 to $4 million to be reimbursed by FEMA to do bridge replacement, additional drainage improvements, and tentatively, it looks like FEMA will fund some channel dredging within the channel and the golf course. So this would further build upon the work that's already been done. This picture here is one of the golf cart paths right after the storm, and you can see obviously needing to be replaced. So that FEMA project is a 2022 construction project. It's still in the design and permitting. This slide just takes you through a little bit more what is going to be covered in that FEMA project. In 2017, insurance, our our district insurance paid 1.14 million in cleanup, debris, the initial recovery to get the course reopened. And then the FEMA project will replace 17 bridges, clean out some culverts, repair cart paths. So it's really quite an extensive project that will further build upon this work. And then here we get to see golfers social distancing. The course is reopened. I'm pleased to share that Touchstone was the first concessionaire to reopen out of all our concessionaires. And I think it's just a testament to how responsive they are, prepared. There was no lag. As soon as they got the word you could reopen, they had the signs, the protocols. They're just ready to go. And so I think that's really a strength of this agreement. So our recommendation then is that this Redwood Canyon Golf Course lease be amended a second time to clarify the provisions we've talked about. And with that, I'll pause and answer questions. And we also have Steve Harker and James Birchall here from Touchstone.
Great. Questions from directors? Director Wieskamp.
Seems to me like everybody's working together very well. The course is open, making improvements, planning more. So I think we did a good thing by going back to golf, and a lot of people were leaving it.
Director Waspy.
Thank you. I just have comments. I think this was, we really threaded the needle with these guys in 2017. They kind of saved us, and we needed them, and they surely came through. I'm never been happier as a person who golfs here at least once a week. I hope my goal is twice a week or more. I played this morning. The course is in incredible shape. The work these guys have done is amazing under some crazy duress. I mean, to take over a golf course and then have it flood out and lose all your revenue and then have the whole darn irrigation system go to heck in a sled. It's amazing what they've done. I'm so thankful and happy that I have the opportunity to go out there and play. And especially now, it's true, Steve and James and everybody, the whole staff, they were on board. I had talked to Steve about getting back on board and seeing what was happening. He said, oh man, yeah, I've already got plans. He had the plan in place. So we're playing, everyone's social distancing. It's amazing. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the age of us golfers that are playing mostly, but everyone's wearing masks. It's an interesting game, but it's still a great outlet, a great recreational forum, and it's very, very crowded. And I don't know if that's Sky West closing or just the fact that Touchstone stepped up so fast and is providing such a great service. But I'm surely happy they're doing that. If I can add my 2 cents worth, because I never talked to staff. I didn't talk to Justin about this morning, honest, but you're going to replace 17 bridges. It's so funny. I play there every week. I don't miss any of the bridges. The traffic patterns are fine. Do we really need 17 bridges? I mean, if FEMA is going to give you the cash, but to pave all the paths or to do some other kind of fixing, I don't miss any of the bridges. Maybe it's just me, but I've gotten totally used to them. The traffic patterns are fine in my opinion, but just a note. And, I have to do this. I love you guys. I appreciate it, but I have to do this for all my neighbors who constantly ask me and my fellow golfers, if there's any way that Wedgwood would consider a restaurant or consider letting some other person run that restaurant, it sure would be an asset for the community. But no need to comment. I support this fully.
Tiffany.
I did want to make sure I forgot 2 things, and I hope either Steve or James can touch on them. One is their Audubon course certification, which is really cool. And 2, I think Touchstone has taken an innovative approach to some evening events for the community. I want to make sure you guys give an update on both of those items in a moment.
Great. Yeah, my only comment is that I'm really grateful to both Touchstone and the Park District staff for being so flexible in arranging working out the finances of these closures. And I know it was really hard on Touchstone, and it was hard for us to as well. So thank you so much for both parties for being so flexible and nimble and working out this deal. But I'd like to turn it over to either James or Steve Harker from Touchstone, if you can like to say a few words.
Great. James, you want to start?
Sure, I can just give a good update and thank you. Yeah, it's been a great relationship with the Park District and us, and working together. One, just to reopen during this COVID-19 and the assistance they gave us with direction from county and working together to make sure that we were able to open on time. It was a really good collaborative effort. With the Audubon, yes, we were hoping to already be officially certified, but with the COVID-19, the audit that the Audubon Society were delayed because they weren't able to travel to come out and inspect the golf course. So we were hoping to have that completed at the end of July. We're getting the travel and everything set up for the inspection to come and the certification. So hopefully by the end of July, we'll have the official stamp and done for certification for Audubon. And again, that really does multiple things for the golf course, but it's really a benefit to the environment, benefit to the grounds. It's water reduction, it's wildlife, improved wildlife conditions, and reduce of chemical usage on the golf course that we're looking to do when we get that certification. So we're really excited about getting that final check mark and the official certification done at the end of July. So really exciting. Excellent.
And I would just like to add to that, you know, this has really been a labor of love. It has to be, I think, the most beautiful golf course in the East Bay. The Park District, the board of directors saved the golf course. They gave staff and they gave us this opportunity to turn it around. But what's really neat is throughout the process, it's been a collaborative effort where we've been working together and figuring things out as we go. And Tiffany and her team and Tammy and everybody involved have been very open and flexible to ideas. For example, last year we discovered that the reason the golf course was flooding in certain areas is that water was actually backing up out of the creek. And we don't have a way environmentally to take that water and put it back into the creek. And so collectively, we thought, well, what the heck, if we create some basins on the golf course, we can drain that and keep it on the golf course until it dissipates. And so that made a huge difference, as Tiffany mentioned, with respect to the winter play and keeping the golf course open. But to do that, we had to rethink all of the other CMF and other projects we had going on. So I just want to, I especially appreciate the comment about being nimble, because that's one of the things that we pride ourselves in. But I want to thank Tiffany and staff for being nimble as well and helping us to not only see opportunities, but take advantage of them when we can. And Tiffany also mentioned we've done a little extra. She had to say that because she knew I would. We always do a little extra. Part of being nimble is sometimes we can be a little too fast, you know. And so we continue to do things here and there where Tiffany's saying, now, Steve, if you'd call me on that and tell me you were doing it, you know, we might be able to count that towards CMF. But we have contributed a little over $100,000 in addition to our arrangement. And I think the way that we get through this irrigation system is a combination of continuing to grow revenue, which, by the way, the combined revenue this year without COVID was projected to be somewhere between $3.5 and $4 million. Wow. If I'm not mistaken, that exceeds the other golf facility that you have. So that's the level of turnaround we've had. But I think we get the irrigation project done because we've got now 150 to 200,000 a year in CMF that we can put forth towards that project. And second, we have to do it from a business standpoint. So Touchstone we're going to have to spend more money. It's not written in the agreement that way, but we just have to do it to get the golf course to where it needs to be so that we can continue to build raving fans and advocates like Mr. Waspy. So anyway, thank you for considering this amendment to our agreement. We are very much looking forward to building on the success that we've had with your help.
Mr. O'Connor.
Wanted to say a couple of words. You know, in my career, I've worked with a lot of concessionaires over the years, and it's always a challenge. In the beginning, with a new concessionaire, it's all sunshine and puppies, and everything's great. And then within a short period of time, it often falls off, and you're then you're hammering to get things done under the contract. And it has not been that way with Touchstone, and I really appreciated that. All of you have heard my continuing words I say, responsive and responsible, and I think that Steve and James have been that. And Director Waspy's comments are really the accountability measure there. Is when this happened in 2014, we first started turning this over, and I started realizing what condition the golf course was in and the facilities were in. I was appalled. I mean, really, they had not been taken care of, and they were ending their service life too. They were at 50 years, but we got the board to give us the money to do the upgrades, to repair the facilities, and then we found Touchstone as a great partner to move forward. And what's the greatest thing of all is that I don't worry about Redwood Canyon anymore. Both James and Steve do a great job of interfacing with the community, which is also part of the challenge here at Redwood Canyon, very involved community of golfers. And those phone calls that were coming to me for 2 or 3 years, maybe they're going to Tiffany, but they're not coming to me anymore. So I think that's a great testament. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Excellent. Director Waspy.
Thank you. So before I move approval of this amendment, if I would like to just suggest that, it's the Audubon, I keep forgetting about that, but I think that's really a key thing. And it's in the Regional Park District's master plan. It's in our DNA. Stewardship is incredibly important to us. So when you get that certification, please, I know you'll let us know, but I hope the district can publicize that. I hope that Steve and James, we can, on our end, I'll write a letter to the editor of the local papers, and we can really promote this, because I think it's a very, very good thing. And you brought up something that I have to say. I admire you guys' sense of humor also, because not only did you deal with the issues of water retention and flooding, you did have to put those retention basins just about right to my slice on 2 holes. So now, instead of just slicing into the rough, I hit it right into the retention pond. And somebody had to plan to put that. I won't say the distance because I'm embarrassed by it, but it's right into 50 yards, or right where I slice into all the time. So thanks. I get a laugh out of it myself.
We did have a professional architect involved. So wasn't me.
Okay.
Great.
A pair of waders for Christmas, Director Waspy.
Madam Secretary, do we have any public comments on this issue before we put this to?
No, we do not on this item.
Great, thank you. So a motion is in order.
So moved.
So moved by Director Waspy.
Second.
And a second by Director Wieskamp. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Director Waspy,
Aye.
Director Wieskamp,
Aye.
Director Rosario.
Aye, that's unanimous. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Isn't it nice to have an item that's a love fest?
AGM O'Connor, do you have a question?
No, I was just saying goodbye to James.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Be safe.
All right.
Yes. Item number 4, review caretaker agreement, Deer Valley, Roddy Ranch.
All right. Hello, everybody. I don't know if you can hear me yet. Give me a moment while I go ahead and set up the share screen.
Welcome to Noah Dort.
Thank you very much. All right, does that look good from everybody's perspective there?
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. Good afternoon, Board Operations Committee. My name is Noah Dort, Administrative Analyst in Operations Business Services, and I'm seeking a recommendation from the committee to the full board to enter into an agreement for caretaker services for Roddy Ranch at Deer Valley Regional Park with Romualdo Cruz. Oops, I'm sorry, one second. There we go. This presentation will briefly cover caretakers in the Park District and then go into detail on Deer Valley's Roddy Ranch, its location, property description, operational challenges, caretaker services, and finally the cost structure and recommendation for the Deer Valley Roddy Ranch Caretaker Agreement. Caretakers are not Park District employees and instead operate under an agreement with parameters specific to each location. Caretakers can be roughly divided into two groups, though there is a potential for some overlap between the groups. The first group of caretakers are used in situations that require a round-the-clock security presence or have complex or unique operational needs, or both. An example of this type of caretaker can be seen at Brooks Island. The second group of caretakers are used where the Park District has acquired property and leased a portion of that property back to the former property owner, or where the property was recently acquired and a temporary security presence is needed during the transitional period while the Park District plans are implemented. The Deer Valley Roddy Ranch caretaker would be in this second group. The Deer Valley Roddy Ranch property is located southeast of Black Diamond Mines and north of Round Valley Regional Preserve in and adjacent to the city of Antioch in Contra Costa County. Roddy Ranch has been in land bank status since its purchase in July 2014 and will continue to be closed to the public during the evaluation, construction, and development phases of the future park. Future uses of the property will be determined in the land use planning process. The 2014 Roddy Ranch purchase consisted of 13 parcels covering approximately 656 acres within the city of Antioch and about 1,229 acres south of the city boundary in unincorporated Contra Costa County. The property is accessed from the east by Chadbourne Road, which eventually dead ends in Black Diamond Regional Park after passing through a private property in holding. There are numerous residential and agricultural structures located in the southwest corner of parcel 007-010-039, including the Cruz family residence, a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 1,440 square foot manufactured home that is still owned by the Roddy family and maintained by Mr. Cruz. The top residence picture is from the 2014 purchase documents, and the bottom residence picture was taken recently in 2020. The Cruz family's ongoing efforts to maintain the appearance of the residence and surrounding grounds can be seen in these pictures. Nearest to the Cruz family residence is a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 1,775 square foot residence. According to the 2014 purchase documents, this residence was built in approximately 1903 and still requires some repairs to address physical depreciation and functional obsolescence. In July of 2017, a limb from a large heritage oak next to the residence fell on the house, causing significant damage. That damage has since been repaired with costs paid through the Park District's insurance, and the remainder of the tree was removed. Nearest to the 3-bedroom residence is a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 750 square foot residence. This residence is believed to be constructed in about 1901 and was in poor condition at the time of purchase in 2014, with an assessment noting that the building had reached the end of its useful life. Again, the top picture is from the 2014 purchase documents, with a more recent picture below, where you can see the area around the residence has been cleaned up by Park District staff. The last of the residences in this area is a 580 square foot, 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom with an efficiency kitchen. The purchase documents indicate this was converted from a storage shed in the mid-1990s and that this building was not constructed on a permanent foundation. Once again, the top picture is from the 2014 purchase documents with the more recent picture below. There is a pending demolition authorization for this structure. I also wanted to note the water system with large storage tank that's in this area. I will refer to that again when we discuss the costs. There are several other structures in the area, including a 1,985 square foot metal frame barn, an 1,100 square foot wood frame barn, a 1,500 square foot wood frame livestock barn, 2 garages, and several horse sheds. In addition to needing to monitor a large number of structures in the area, the primary operational challenge to providing a security presence at Roddy Ranch is its large size. The picture below is taken from Chadbourne Road, with the driveway on the left leading to the Roddy family's former home. And just to give you an idea of the distance, the area that you were looking at before is now in the red box there. The red boxed area is where the Cruz family residence and other structures are located, just barely visible in the lower picture. In fact, you probably can't even see it there. The Roddy family recently vacated their home in May, which ended their lease back. Park District staff has been in the process of evaluating the Roddy family residence for any needed repairs in anticipation of making this an employee security residence. It is possible that a security presence will need to be maintained at, at both locations on this large property. Caretaker services provided by Mr. Cruz are daily patrol of the area, including Chadbourne Road, reporting any suspicious or illegal activity and any emergency or hazardous situations to the appropriate authority, maintaining landscaping around the residence, including defensible fire space clearance, acting as a resource for Park District staff by sharing information about the property, and maintaining regular communication with Park District staff. Mr. Cruz has performed a version of these caretaker services for years prior to the Park District purchase of the Roddy Ranch in 2014 and continuing to today. Mr. Cruz is very familiar with the property and has also handled plumbing, fencing, and general maintenance of Roddy Ranch. Although it should be noted that Park District staff would be tackling most of that work outside of the Cruz family residence. Mr. Cruz has proven to be responsive and responsible, and he has established and maintained positive relationships with Park District staff. Unit Manager Terry Noonan and Park Supervisor Rex Caulfield have expressed appreciation for Mr. Cruz's caretaker services and support his ongoing presence for security. Park District staff recommends that the Board Operations Committee approve and recommend to the full board entering into an agreement for caretaker services for Roddy Ranch at Deer Valley Regional Park with Romaldo Cruz for 1 year, with 2 additional 1-year extensions upon mutual agreement between the Park District and Mr. Cruz. That means a maximum total term of 3 years, including extensions. The cost of the Park District for this action is $930 annually, which represents the electricity cost paid by the Park District for area security lighting and a well pump to supply the utility water tank, which I showed you before, for the residents. That tank serves the residences and other buildings, as well as a cattle trough. And that's it. Unit Manager Terry Noonan and Park Supervisor Rex Caulfield are also here to help answer any questions you might have. Any questions?
Great. Directors, any questions?
Oops.
Director Waspy.
Yeah, I think this is an excellent idea. I guess a couple of questions. So who lives in Jack and Donna's place, or what did we do with Jack and Donna's place? Is this, I mean, it's literally a museum. I've been there. I hope it's protected, and I hope that's what Mr. Cruz will be protecting or doing something about.
Director Waspy, what's happening right now is, first of all, we're getting an alarm system installed at the Roddy House. We're evaluating the Roddy House for a future residence. It'll be some time before we use that for potentially a visitor center in this area. So we are looking to have a resident actually occupy the Roddy House, obviously to protect that property. So we are in the process of doing that, and having Mr. Cruz down the road will help. But as Noah pointed out, that's quite a distance between the Roddy House and the Cruz house. So we're working on that to get somebody into that house.
All right. And what does Mr. Cruz do for a living? And I don't want to get personal, but I mean, is he going to run cattle on that land?
To my knowledge, he worked for the Roddy family. We don't have any employment. There's no payment to the Cruz family, to Romaldo Cruz, for the caretaking, nor do they pay rent. The only cost is that $930. I do not know what other employment Mr. Cruz might have now that the Roddy family has left.
Director Wieskamp.
That's an interesting question. Are we open to the gentleman running cattle on there?
There is, I believe, grazers in the area. We do have a cattle trough that's served by that water system, but I would have to defer to Rex if he has more knowledge on the grazers.
Okay. It seems like it's an appropriate spot. Obviously, he's been there and knows the territory. And that would be worthwhile maybe for both the gentleman and for us. Beautiful property.
Park Supervisor Caulfield, would you like to clarify? Is Rex in the house?
Yeah, Rex is in the Zoom, but we can't hear him yet.
Ah,
Maybe Denise, we try muting and unmuting Rex. Try it again.
She's lost in the Zoom factory.
Rex, we still don't have you.
No, that doesn't work.
You might not have joined with computer audio. That might be part of the problem. How about Terry? Terry Noonan, maybe you can join us. There he is.
Good afternoon. Yes, it is an excellent question. For the remainder of this year, Jack's former ranch hand will be finishing out the grazing season. The intent with our stewardship department, Dina Robertson and Allison Roth, is to put that property out to RFP, open it up to any other professional grazers who may be interested in that property.
Fine.
Did we?
Where's D?
No,
Cesario? There he is.
I'm here.
Okay. You're frozen. That's why we were wondering.
Oh, okay. Director Wieskamp, did you have another question?
No, I think that seems like the intelligent thing to do. If you want, obviously, anybody who wants to can apply. We'll go through the process.
Great. Any further questions? I have none. Okay, great. Seeing no other questions, do we have any public comment on this?
Chair Rosario, we have no public comments at this time on this item.
Thank you, Denise. Seeing no public comments, a motion is in order.
So move.
Second.
Moved by Director Wieskamp and seconded by Director Waspy. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Director Wieskamp,
Aye.
Director Waspy,
Aye.
Director Rosario.
Aye. And it's unanimous.
Everyone.
Thank you very much.
No.
Okay. Item number 5, Operations Division Reoperation Plan.
So this will be a repeat for Director Rosario and Director Waspy, and a preview for Director Wieskamp. So I'm going to do a screen share. And let's see. All right. Everybody see that?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, so I'm going to run through the PowerPoint, and I'll stop intermittently to ask for questions since we're in the screen sharing mode. There we go. Okay, so I'll give you a quick introduction. What we're going to do, our plan involves 4 phases. Now, these are not necessarily aligned with the state phase reopening or with the local public health agency reopening. These are our phases for reopening that are based on the public health shelter-in-place order and how that order changes over time. So I'll go over those phases, and then I'll go into some more detail on those around various functions of reoperating parks, picnicking, camping, etc. So let me move on to that. Phase 1, we're currently in phase 1. This will go through July 19th. Phase 1 involves opening specific facilities or parks or areas of parks that don't require additional staffing, because staffing is one of our bottlenecks. Getting, as you may recall, We furloughed our seasonal staff at the beginning of the shelter in place, bringing those folks back on, and additionally hiring new seasonal staff will take some time in the current situation. So we're working closely with HR to start that process to bring back seasonal staff to help us reoperate the parks. So phase one are things that we can open without additional staffing, and I have some details on that. Phase two is the bulk of the work here, and what we're trying to do is reopen the majority of our parks, including our camping, our picnic areas, our swim areas, and trying to get those open. That will not involve group camping or group picnic areas, as those are high crowding and high touch facilities, so those will have to wait until phase three. Phase three is really about reopening our group areas, our high touch facilities, and all of those will take direction from public health before we can do that, and we're not there yet. Phase four is simply when we have a vaccine or otherwise we're all back to normal and we move back into normal operations. So I'm going to take some time to go through the details of this. Phase one. So what are we opening in phase one? We've already opened, and I know all three of you are aware of this. We've reopened Point Isabel Regional Shoreline. We opened Stanford Avenue at Mission Peak, and we reopened the Robert Recreation Ball Field. We also have opened the Old Tunnel Road entrance to Sibley, the Crown Beach Otis parking lot, and also the Tidewater access at Martin Luther King Jr. Regional Shoreline. Also on June 27th, we're working on plans to reopen the Regional Park Botanic Garden. That's kind of exciting to get that opened sooner. A lot of people are missing that facility. Also in phase one, we've reopened many of our concession and special use permitted activities. This is a list of those. You see Redwood Canyon right at the top there, opened first. And you can see Native Here Nursery at Tilden is reopening on the 13th. Has reopened on the 13th. So these are open. Just to reiterate, the process here is our concessionaires reach out to Tiffany Margolisi. They then submit a social distancing plan for reoperating under the rules of the shelter in place. We review that. Once we review that and we've approved it, then they reopen. Now, some facilities obviously stay closed because parks are closed, and we'll get into that in a minute. We're also, the stables are restarting their private lessons, and so that's going to restart fairly soon. We're also allowing the special uses at Shadow Cliffs to proceed, including the open water swim clubs. You may recall that that's a non-lifeguarded activity, so we're going to re-allow that to occur, and also the Portuguese water dog activity, but they will have to walk in like anybody else in the general public. We're not opening the parking lots just yet. We'll get to that. Okay, our permitted day camps. These are day camps that operate within the regional park system by permit, and they're operated by third-party operators, not by park district staff. Tiffany has been reviewing plans with the operators and approving permits as we go. We had two of these camp operators, the external camp operators, start this week, and there's a few more that are going through the process and should be started fairly soon. It's quite challenging, and they'll have to adapt. They usually use our group picnic sites, so they're have agreed to not use those sites, and they're making alternate plans. They're using the restrooms that are currently open in parks. As you know, not all of the restrooms are open at this time, but we're working on that. So that's our permitted day camps. They're getting started. And this is an important part of reoperating the economy, because a lot of these camps are taking care of people's children while they're working during the day. This is the bulk of the process here, and you see a lot of parks listed here. The big news here is we're opening the campgrounds and also the family picnic areas. And once again, the group campsites and group picnic areas will remain closed. This little phase 3 when we get direction from public health. But as you can see, we're opening up the vast majority of parks that are currently closed under the shelter in place, and opening many of the picnic areas. And I'm going to run through this list, but it's a pretty extensive list, and I believe all of you have the PowerPoint document. Okay, let's talk about the details. Family camping. Now, we're still waiting. We still have some inconsistency between the two counties when it comes to picnicking and camping. Alameda County and Contra Costa County are not quite aligned yet, but we are communicating with Alameda County, and hopefully they'll, in an update to their shelter in place, will address camping and picnicking soon. And we are in direct contact with them, as you know, with our liaison staff. But what this will look like under social distancing, and we all know this may go on for many months, we're essentially going to operate at 50% of capacity. So only using half of the available campsites, every other campsite essentially. There'll be none of the cabins will be open. We have not gotten clearance for operating the cabins yet, but hopefully we'll have those operating sometime before the end of the summer. The group camps will remain closed. Many of the group campgrounds will be used by the permitted day camps for daytime camp operations, but not for overnight use. Camping will be by reservation only. There will be no drop-in camping because of the limited camping that we'll have available. Also, there'll be an 8-person maximum per campsite, which is our normal maximum per campsite, but we are only allowing 2 vehicles per campsite and no extra vehicles. The intention here is to reduce the possibility of overcrowding in the campsites. So also, each campsite will have to be the same household or social bubble as per the current social distancing protocols from the county. And I'll stop for a minute if anybody's got a question at this point on camping. Director Rosario, if you would, you want me just to run through the end and we'll take questions at the end? I see Director Waspy has his hand up.
Are you accepting questions right now?
Sure, if you want to talk about camping, I thought I'd stop at each area.
Well, yeah, okay. I'm referring to backpack camping. I'm very interested in the Ohlone Wilderness. Is that going to be next on your schedule? Is that included in camping?
It's the very next slide.
Okay, great. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Okay, I'll move on. And there it is, backpacking camp. We're going to reopen those on the same schedule in phase 2. There may be some reduction in campsite availability. These campsites are reservation only anyway, so that'll help with our planning around that, but they'll be opening in phase 2 also. Okay.
Is Ohlone Wilderness on there?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay.
That's an old.
We have Sunol there, but we are including Ohlone Wilderness also.
Yeah.
Okay. Family picnicking. Now, the picture here is really important that you see. Essentially what we're going to be doing, because of the social distancing, we're not quite sure how long this is going to last. One of our plans here is to set up these picnic sites to allow for proper social distancing. What that will require is to remove some of our picnic tables. And as you can see from this picture, our standard picnic table setup is quite substantial. Those poles that are going into the ground, vertically into the ground, go into quite a lot of concrete. So we've already worked through, staff has worked through a lot of protocols here, trying to work through prototypes about how to do this. So we are going to be removing those tables, filling in the stanchion holes with concrete, and then storing those tables. And then when we get to a point where we're past the shelter in place, then we can replace the tables at some point in the future. So this work, as you know, we have over 3,000 picnic tables in the district and hundreds of family picnic sites throughout our district. This will take some time. Park District staff right now, their #1 priority is managing weed abatement for fire prevention. So they are deep into that work right now and need to get that done, as we already seem to be in fire season, or as I think the Chief Talley says, there no longer is a fire season, it's all year long. So staff are really working on weed abatement work in parks right now. But what we will do is we're trying to get as many of these family picnic sites ready for the July 20th opening date, and then slowly over time, each park will reopen new areas of family picnicking as they go forward. So this will be a phased approach to reopening this, but our intention is to have as many open as we can by July 20th. But that's quite a bit of work on the part of park staff. It's a lot. And the GM has provided some additional funding to get that work done because it'll require some rental of equipment and maybe some additional labor help for our staff in the field. Again, same rules, 8 people maximum per table, same household, same social bubble. We'll have additional signage as part of this plan. And as I'll talk about Del Valle and Chautauqua, we're going to be reducing the number of people entering those parks for a variety of reasons, and I'll get to that in a minute. So that's picnicking. Director Wieskamp.
You know, we're making mandates for our employees. And I wonder how on earth do you expect them to check to see that the 8 persons who are there are from the same household? Or we just educate? It's been so controversial, this whole thing.
Mhm.
You're exactly right. And this has really been a challenge. And I've had several conversations with staff around this. And the position I've taken, Director Wieskamp, and maybe some of you have heard me say this, is that we're going to provide our best opportunities for the public to social distance and protect themselves. And our staff is doing educational work along with our police department. But at some point, the visiting public has to take personal responsibility to follow a good social distancing practice. So we're going to try and set this up so that they can do that, but they do have personal responsibility to practice social distancing.
I think our staff should have to do it. I think we put the rules and we know the reasons, and what are we going to do if they're breaking the rules? I just want them to feel comfortable that we don't expect it.
Right, and that's exactly the position we're taking. They can take an educational approach, but we're not enforcing it. We're doing our best to educate people and provide the opportunity to social distance.
Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
That was a great question from Director Wieskamp. I'd like to follow up on that. Do we have any liability? To enforce social distancing?
I don't think so.
I don't believe we do. You know, the police department is working closely with the district attorney's office, and pretty much I think all the agencies, police agencies, are taking an educational approach to managing social distancing. I think in terms of, you know, consequences, I think one of the things I tell members of the public that I talk to about this is that, you know, we're trying to keep parks open. If at some point this isn't working and it's too crowded, then we potentially may have to close parks down again. And I think that is kind of the plea I have to the public is help us keep parks open. Our staff are doing the best they can. I think they're doing a great job, but we're not going to put ourselves in jeopardy in terms of Director Wieskamp's talking about in terms of enforcing social distancing. You know, they're already challenged with keeping the restrooms clean, with emptying the trash. But in terms of liability, I don't believe so. But obviously we'll defer that to the legal department, and I'll direct it to the legal department to get back to you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Any other questions?
On picnicking. Okay, I'm going to move on. All right, boating and vessel inspection. Obviously, with some of our boating parks closed, we've not had boating going on, but what we're developing, Steve Castile and his team are developing protocols for doing the vessel inspections under social distancing rules. And once the associated parks open up, we'll have boating again. And I think that'll really make a lot of people happy. And we have several concessions that are associated with closed parks, like Shadow Coast Marina, Del Valle Marina, the Del Valle Water Sports Facility, and the Lake Anza Cafe. And hopefully we'll get these open when those parks reopen. Although a lot of our concessionaires have indicated to us that if they can't open by 4th of July, they essentially can't make enough money to justify the season. So we're working with them closely to see if we can get those reoperated once the parks open. We are also going to be operating day camps with our staff, and I've got Ann Cassabaum, our Chief of Interpretive and Recreation Services. She's here with us, and we have some specific questions, but we're setting up our camps to operate under social distancing protocols, and it's a limited to 12 people. That's 10 children, 2 adults, and they're going to run for 3 weeks as a cohort. And we're going to run several camps at once. We're going to have camps running. We're going to work with 2 of our community partners. I think one of them is Brothers on the Rise in Oakland for Alameda County, and then we're going to work with YES Neighborhoods group in Richmond. So we're going to run camps for those 2 community groups for 3 weeks each, and I think we're going to run about 6 camps total. So we're working on getting our day camps back working under the social distancing protocols. Director Rosario.
These day camps, will they be just one day, or will, like, if they're, or are they a week, and will they be having the same kids be going to the same, having the same adult leaders, you know, kind of staying in a pod?
Yeah, they call it a cohort. Yeah, and I'll let Ann answer the question.
All right, can everybody hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Ann Cassabaum, Chief of Interpretive and Recreation Services. So according to the public health orders, they want us to have the same children for a minimum of 3 weeks. So what we plan to do is normally a park and a day camp will have 50 or maybe 60 children in one group. What we plan to do is have multiple groups during those 3 weeks. So we'll have 2 rec leaders with 10 children in probably 4 or 5 groups. So we'll be serving that same number of the 50 children, but instead of switching out the kids every week, we will have the same children for the full 3 weeks. And Jim is correct, one group from Oakland, from Brothers on the Rise, and the other partnership with Yes Nature's Neighborhoods in Richmond.
Great. And then what about our staffing? Are we going to be requiring that they get tested prior to and then during the program?
No.
No, we won't be having tests. The staff be tested. We plan to take temperatures when children are, you know, brought into camp. We plan to minimize contact with parents, so that instead of parents signing in, we will do a visual check-in. You know, we want to have all those safety protocols in place, but we won't be testing staff or children prior to that, just by temperature.
And what's the reason for not testing?
I'll take that question, Ann. So, Director Rosario, you've asked this question about staff testing. I think that's a question that's being discussed amongst the executive team with the general manager. And I think that's probably a very high level policy discussion we will be having with the board at some point.
Okay.
So there's probably a lot in terms of, you know, there's a lot to implementing such a testing program. And so we're having that discussion at your request.
Okay, thank you.
Director Wieskamp.
You know, in the past, the foundation has sponsored some campers. Are they doing that this year or not?
Yes, we have submitted a proposal to the Regional Parks Foundation because we've had to reallocate their funding. And this has been the request for them to fund these 2 programs.
Right. Thank them.
Okay. Any other questions on the camping? All right, I'm going to move on, and you can stay on because we're going right into programming. So, Ann, you want to talk a little bit about our plans around programming?
So we've had great success with the online digital learning and posting of videos and doing some outreach to classes this spring with virtual, you know, programs, live programs. We plan to continue that, but as we ramp up and go back into in-person programs, what we're suggesting is that drop-in programs are really pre-registered, so we can determine and control how many people will be served. We are going to do a lot of roving, a lot of public contact that the naturalists will be doing, pop-up programs, and looking at, like, with people taking folks hiking, that not using narrow gauge trails, but trails that are wider to allow for social distancing. protocols, which will have staff working in pairs of 2 to remind people about social distancing, setting a good example that staff will be wearing masks, and all of the safety and sanitation best practices along with that.
And public programs will require pre-registration, correct?
Correct, correct. And then as far as the school programs, I mean, really, it's going to be dependent upon how comfortable schools feel about bringing students back into the parks. We anticipate that to be that to allow for social distancing, and if that really will occur. But what we plan to do is really bump up the online digital learning and offering, in-person live programs, actual time for the teachers.
Okay. Any questions for Anne on programming?
Well thought out.
If there's any silver lining or lemonade to be made out of the lemons here, is that I'm really proud of our natural staff, the way they've really stepped up and done some really creative work in the digital realm, the virtual interpretation. That's really been some really high quality work. And I think there's just more great stuff to come. And, into the future, I think a lot of the video, especially the videos that staff are making, are going to be very helpful to teachers or to parents that are teaching at home, one or the other. And I think it's really going to benefit us into the future. So, and I'm really proud of how people have stepped up, the staff have stepped up and taken on, and they've done a collaborative effort where they found certain staff are very good with the digital editing, and so they've kind of tagged onto them, and some people were better at the presenting, and so they've really kind of done a team effort here. It's really great work. Okay, I'm going to move on. Okay, swim areas, and I think I have Pete DeQuincy is with us, I believe. Pete, are you with us? I saw him pop in for a minute.
What everybody wants to know.
Yes, sir. I am.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
I'm just
There
trying
it
to
is.
get my video up. There we go. So
You
yeah,
want to talk about swim areas and what's happening?
yeah, absolutely. Lifeguard Services worked really closely with park operations on one, how do we provide the engineering controls for our employees if and when we open the swim areas, and then also the engineering controls that we've looked at for the public. And some of the things that we've thought about specifically when it comes to the swim areas as a way to really encourage the appropriate social distancing, mask use and stuff is really about reducing the number of patrons that can come to the site for a specific time. The idea that we traditionally would say that you could come in at 11 o'clock and stay till 6 o'clock really won't serve a larger population if we have to reduce our numbers to provide that social distancing. So the idea that we thought about specifically was an 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for one shift, and then a 3 to 6 for another shift. So one wave and two waves that would come in and utilize the park. We work closely with, I've worked closely with Steve Castile and with each individual unit manager and park supervisor to really determine a number that we could provide safe swimming at all the sites that are listed here on the screen. It comes out roughly to be about 10 to 15% that we're looking at. And given, I want you to know that this idea that the initial number, let's say, for example, is 100 at Coal Canyon, that's our tester number. We really want to be able to see that once when we do open, that the engineering controls work and that we have a really strong idea of the effectiveness. Too small a number, we won't see that. Too large a number, we'll have a hard time turning people away. And so we really want to start conservatively in regards of how many people we want to bring in, figure out if there's any gaps in the swing, as Jim has told me, identify those gaps, and be able to then be flexible and improvise and update our engineering controls. So what we're hoping to do with the tentative date of July 20th is have the facilities listed here open. Depending on what you're seeing there, again, Contra Loma is currently under construction right now. And so that is not a facility that is on the table. Is that correct, Steve?
Right.
That is correct.
Until early August when we go to the operation.
Yeah, Jim, my only trouble with seeing the screen is that I have the 4 video faces covering a part of the screen. So I always am running just a little short on what's going on right there. So my apologies. But yeah, we're really strongly trying to adhere to all the social distancing protocols and health orders that the counties have provided. One of the things, and I came in a little late, so I'm going to apologize for that, is that we're coming from the stance of education as opposed to enforcement. We really want to empower our patrons to have the ability to exercise their controls themselves. We want to make sure that we have the good signage up. We will routinely make announcements about practicing good social distance in the use of cloth masks. But we also, it won't be our responsibility to pull 2 10-year-olds apart that are playing in the water. It's just not feasible. We don't see that happening with law enforcement or park staff or lifeguards. And so just wanted to be very clear on that. And so that's kind of our plan at this point. Again, we want to be able to offer access to water because we know that certain communities are sensitive and they need access to water. That's one of the main ways that they have cooling measures that they get at their house and in their communities. And so we're trying to do that. And again, there's a lot of moving parts in regards to park operations, lifeguard service, public safety, and reservations. I know that reservations has been talked about, but what we're striving for here also is the idea to reduce the amount of contact of cash handling between park staff and the public, and also reduce the amount of standing in line in hopes that you might get into the facility. We really don't want people standing close together. You stand in line for an hour in hopes that you might get in, and then you don't get in. So that's going to really leave a bad taste in both the public and in park operations, so our staff. So the idea, what we've been working on is having a reservation system so that you can reserve a slot from 11 to 2. Go in, once you're done swimming, we have that 1 hour of 2 to 3 to do the cleaning and decontamination, assist people in packing up and going, and then we open another group in. And that's what we're hoping to do. So I think I covered all the spots on that. Could we go to the next slide just to make sure? The open water facilities. And what we were looking at on the last one is really about the closed gated facilities that we have and how we plan to implement those reductions in capacity to help us with the social distancing. What we're doing here out at Del Valle and Shadow Cliffs is that we're really reducing the attendance capacity via parking spaces that are available. And we understand, and me been out of Del Valle working as a head guard there for 3 years in the past, back in the 90s, that when a patron comes to Del Valle, there's lots of activities that they're doing. Specifically, they could be hiking, picnicking, swimming, boating, fishing, all sorts of activities in addition to just swimming. So what we're trying to do is, rather than put a fence up potentially out at Del Valle, is reduce the activity by the amount of parking spaces. And then in the first weeks that we see, really get a vibe or assessment of the behavior of the patrons on how they're going to be using the park and go from there. So that's what we're hoping to do.
And just to add in there is that this will not include the campground. Those that enter the campground are a separate count than the day use vehicles entering the park.
I think that's, Director Rosario.
Yeah, this was brought up in the task force by 2428 as well. About the, I mean, there's some families that don't have the ability to make a reservation via computer. And will we be having at least a few spots that would be first come, first serve?
You know, I think Director Rosario, that's a great question. And I know we've talked about that. We haven't cracked the nut on that yet, but it is on the top of our list on how to figure out that, because I am aware that there are some families just don't have access to the internet or have the capacity of making online reservations. So we are looking into that quite a bit.
Louise Camp?
Why can't we say that there can be reservations made by phone? nearly anybody can have access to a phone. One way.
Yes.
That's why Tiffany has her hand up.
Yes, so I just wanted to chime in, Tiffany Margalisi, Business Services Manager, that we do have our phone call center open remotely. Staff are taking those calls via telecommuting. So the phones are open daily, Monday through Friday. And just like with all our programs, we would offer the phone option in addition to the online option.
And then my second question is staffing. Will we have enough guards by the 20th if we do open on the 20th?
That is a great question, Director Rosario. Currently, as of Tuesday, we brought in our head guards and assistant heads. So we brought in 30 guards, and we're doing the initial leadership training for them. And then in the following weeks, we'll be bringing in a 90 additional more lifeguards. So we'll have roughly 120 at a minimum for the July 20th date. And we do plan on having a late academy in mid-June to bring on 20 more cadets in hopes of anticipation. Not that they'll be fully working. 22, I'm being corrected by my staff, 22. What we're really trying to do is make sure that they are into our system so that they're available for us to work in 2021. Just because if we don't hire any this year, brand new lifeguards, it's going to really detrimentally affect us in the following years. And so to answer that question directly, Director Rosario, yes, we'll have enough guards.
Thank you.
And Director Rosario, in answer to your question also about reservations, so both Del Valle and Shadow Cliffs will be first come, first serve. It's just a reduced capacity of vehicles entering, so they will not require reservations to enter the park. So that's an option for folks too.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that's the plan for swimming. Thank you, Pete. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, and rounding us out is we're just really quickly phase 3. Phase 3 are things that are high crowding or high touch. So we're going to keep Indian Camp parking lot at Tilden closed because it'd be too much of a challenge to manage crowds at Little Farm. Everybody knows how crowded that place gets, and we can't control access there. Lake Nike Road is going to remain closed for now. Pending direction from public health agencies, we will reopen group camps and group picnic sites when that's allowed under the shelter-in-place order. All of these facilities, our outdoor classes, our special events like races, large special events, all of our reservable facilities, and all of our high-touch, high-contact concessions like the merry-go-round, the train rides, and the group lessons at the stables, all of those will have to wait until we get direction from public health and clearance from public health to do that. So we don't have a timeline on any of that. You know, we're adapting as we're moving with the public health agencies, and obviously that is dependent on the COVID-19 cases and the caseloads that they're managing. The visitor centers, yes, Director Wieskamp.
Have I missed it, or did you say something about Ardenwood?
No, Ardenwood is going to reopen in phase 2.
Okay.
Because we do have the option at Ardenwood because we have a point of control at the entrance, so we can control the capacity of visitation. So we are going to reopen it.
So we're going to be open mainly by allowing capacity is how we control it.
Correct.
Good.
Yeah, I thought you would enjoy that. And then the visitor centers are going to remain closed because under the shelter-in-place order, the public health order, they're considered indoor museums. So those will remain closed for now. And then we're going to slowly get our interpretive student aid staff on board. And hopefully if we get clearance to do that, we'll be able to open those up sometime soon. And then phase 4 is everything's great. We've got a vaccine. We're all living our lives again. And who knows when that'll happen. And we're spending, but we are preparing for a long-term operations under shelter in place. And that's why I wanted to take the time to brief all of you on these plans and get any input from the board members. I am going to take this to the full board on the 7th of July to make sure that the full board is informed about what our plans are. I want to make sure I'm clear about the challenges we face here. One is the HR challenge, getting our seasonal staff back. Dr. Rosario, your question was very right on the target. Can we get everybody back on time? And we are really scrambling with HR to get our seasonal staff back. Our first phase is all of our returning seasonals. Then after that, our seasonals that we already went through a process earlier in the year prior to the shelter in place. We went through a recruitment process, so we're going to work on that list and get those staff back. We're also working very closely with public affairs. Obviously, as looking at the PowerPoint, we're going to have many new rules and new ways of operating parks, and we've got to make sure the public understands that. Pete is exactly right. We don't want a lot of people showing up at our swim facilities, standing for hours in the heat, and then being disappointed that they can't get in. So we're going to have to work very closely with public affairs to educate the public about the new rules around camping and picnicking and swimming. And so we've already started meeting with public affairs. The reservation system has to be set up and ready to go. So we're getting that prepared to move forward. And then of course, the park staff have a lot of work ahead of them with the picnic areas and getting those prepared to operate under social distancing rules. So we've got a lot of things in play. Our timeline is pretty tight, but at this point, we're pretty confident. And unless something changes with the public health order and the COVID-19 caseload, those are our plans. If you've got any additional questions, I've got myself here. Steve Castile, our Chief of Operations, is also on board, and we've got Ann here. So we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Any other questions from the board? Dennis, Director Waspy, sorry.
Okay, thank you. So tell me one more time, phase 2 is July 20th?
That's correct. The Monday.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I know I was excoriated for this a few months ago, but I just read in the last minute or two that Governor Newsom's come out and said everyone has to wear face masks all the time. And that's his newest mandate. And I know what a mandate means, nothing, but we should at least try to comply. And I'm wondering if at some point, and unlike some of our critics, I thought our police department handing out face coverings was an excellent use of our police and excellent educational tool. And I'm wondering if our ambassadors or trail patrol volunteers or other people who by definition want to be out in the parks, want to be helping out, if we could work with the legislative crew to maybe get some funding for masks. According to Mr. Newsom, you can, and I know that science changes every 5 minutes, but today, 20 minutes ago, he said that 75% of transmission can be stopped by wearing masks, and he's mandating wearing masks. So I hope in the future we can think about that in a way. I know it'll change, but again, if we're going to invite people back, I know we probably don't have liability, but the fact is maybe we have an obligation to at least educate and help out in that way. And I know that masks can get expensive, but I think if some of our assembly members and want to go along with this and think it's a great idea, which we all do, that parks are open and they are the quote only game in town, that they should fund that type of stuff.
We have been in conversations with the Regional Parks Foundation. That's another area that they've looked into. Director Waspy, you're exactly right. The challenge here is that the shifting sands underneath our feet when it comes to the various health orders. In fact, we were just having the meeting with our public affairs team this morning, and we were making plans to change our face mask signage that we're using in the parks to the 30-foot requirement that we have for the local public health agency. So I've not seen the new information you're talking about, but I have read, articles on the science behind the face mask. And it's true, if everybody wears them, you can significantly reduce viral load in the air, but that requires everybody to wear the mask. So, and that, if any of us have been out and about, I was on the Iron Horse this morning. It was my wife and I were the only people wearing masks. So, that's a real challenge, but handing out masks would probably be, it's like, when I was a ranger, and I come across dogs off leash, and people say, "Oh, I don't have a leash with me." And I said, "That's not a problem." And I had those little nylon leashes, and the hand went off. I could solve that problem.
Yep.
So, Director Wieskamp.
I don't want to put anybody at risk because people are getting very angry now. Not all people, but enough people about wearing masks and how close you can be or can't be. And I don't want to have any staff member or volunteer suffer consequences from telling somebody something they've heard 29 times and they're still not going to do it. I believe Alameda County's health officials said 30 feet distance. And let me tell you, the reaction I heard from everybody I knew was not good. They saw no reason, unless somebody has come up with a new scientific reason to do that beyond the 6 feet. I think you're going to have the devil of a time getting it across to people. But I don't want anybody to be suffering. I don't care if you're a police officer, another employee, an ambassador, or a volunteer. I don't think that's.
And I won't speak for the police department. Obviously, that's Chief Cheerborough's role. But Steve and I have been very clear in messaging to the park staff about their role in this and about our concerns that they don't put themselves in confrontation, and that we don't have an expectation for them to get into a confrontation or even near that situation. So we've been very clear about that and continue to message that way, Director Wieskamp. So we hear you on that, and that's been our expectation for staff. We're trying to set up our parks in a way that allows for social distancing and setting up the rules. But in the end, if this becomes a problem and people continue to not follow the rules, then there's a potential that the public health department could tell us to close down parks. And that's what we're trying to avoid, is we're hoping everybody volunteers and works with us to help keep parks open. But there's always that possibility that public health could say, this isn't working out. And we're trying to avoid that.
Absolutely. I appreciate that.
I have one last question regarding staffing. Are the park ranger staff, are we back at 100%? Are they all back to work?
I'll let Steve answer that.
So everybody is back to work that can work. That's not off on family leave or the Family Act that's been implemented right now. So yes, we are fully staffed at this point.
Great. And how are we doing with vehicles?
Vehicles are fine. We've actually staggered the shifts. We're working alternate days of the week, alternate hours, and so everything is working out. It's working out great.
Good to hear. Director Waspy.
Steve, you piqued my interest. Everyone's back to work except the people that aren't back to work. What percentage is that? Or
it's very minimal. It's within the 5 to 10% range, I would say.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
The last time we did a full count from HR, Director Waspy, was like 91% were available to work and 90% were working of total staff. So we're pretty close.
Great. Is there any public comments? Madam Secretary?
There are no public comments regarding this item.
Excellent. I think this is just information only. Good. Any further board comments?
I want to thank staff for all your work.
Yeah.
It's been a tremendous to pull all this together and plan again.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud. It's it's an army of people across all of the divisions. I'm gonna tell you, we're all working very closely together. Pete's been pointing on the swimming, but we've been working really closely with public safety. We're having regular meetings with public safety. So I'm pretty proud of staff. It's a combined effort and to try and get parks reopened and do it properly. So I appreciate those comments. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Director Waspy.
Pardon me, you said public comment. I thought you said board comments. We've got one more agenda item, right? Then we'll go to board comments.
We?
Yeah, great.
We have one more item.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Skimming ahead.
I was looking forward to getting out early. Okay.
Ready to talk.
So thank you very much for the reoperation plan. So we're at number 6. Park Operations Lake Unit.
Yay, been talking about those.
Unit Manager David Vance. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Looks like my video was stopped by the host. Oh. There I am. Sorry about that. So good afternoon. I'm going to do a presentation. If you give me a little time to set this up here to share my screen. You see it?
Yeah, there it is.
Okay.
Green.
So I just want to make sure I got the right video up. Want to make sure my PowerPoint's up here. You guys can all see it.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I'm new at this game, so my apologies. Good afternoon, Board of Directors. I'm David Vance, the Lakes Unit Manager, and today I will be discussing the Lake Del Valle operational updates. Get my PowerPoint to work here. Okay, an overview. I'm going to discuss the COVID-19 new procedures for the campground, campground modifications, quagga mussel inspection updates, campground social distancing, some of the things that we've done there. Also, I'll be touching on the water treatment plant project, a little history of Lake Del Valle and the water system, the water line upgrade, valve removal replacement, East Shore Trail, raw water line, water tank transmission pipeline, and the water treatment plant. So because of COVID-19, we had to do some modifications to the campground. Some of the modifications that we've done for the kiosk operations, staff have installed plexiglass barriers. We're going to limit staff to one person per kiosk or in the kiosk at a time. Camping will be reservations only, no drop-ins. Limit cash handling if possible, use of credit cards. Camping, reduce the number of campsites for social distancing, cover tables and tape off fire rings on closed sites. Staff will monitor for compliance. For the restrooms, we're establishing 6-foot social distance lines leading into the bathrooms and while you're in the restrooms themselves. Educational signage will be posted outside of the restrooms, and we're going to develop a cleaning schedule and have that posted on the restrooms. And here for quagga inspections, we've done a little tweaking with our signage here. We created a new sign for the inspection station for an educational for the public that are coming for their inspections. We've also developed new procedural methods for the staff as they're implementing their inspections and interacting with the public to make sure that we're keeping them as safe as we can with the PPE that we have provided, as well as hand sanitizer and other new procedural things for them carrying forward with the inspection process. The Del Valle campground reservations. Del Valle Family Campground is 150 sites at full capacity. As you know, AGM O'Connor said that we're going to open up July 20th under the new shelter-in-place order to allow family camping and adhere to social bubbles. We're going to open sites to keep 100 people per restroom buildings. And then also we are reducing the number of sites by half. Every other site, and we're not going to have as you know, the convenience cabins open at this time. We're going to have approximately 73 sites at 8 people per site, roughly 584 people. We will not have group camping as far as camping goes, but we will allow the day campers to use the sites as needed. We're going to have a maximum of 2 cars per site. And staff will be notifying campers of intermittent water shutoff due to the water treatment plant project. So that's still going on, and we want to make sure the public knows of any disruptions in service. So Del Valle water treatment plant development. In 1968, the dam was constructed, and Del Valle State Park was started to develop into a recreational facility. November 1974, the Park District entered into an operational agreement with State Parks, the Department of Water Resources, and the Army Corps of Engineers. In the first phase of development was the water systems. The water system was built to serve the park irrigation and potable water for staff and visitors. Through the 80s and 90s, the system was modified to meet new standards. In 2008 and 2009, the Park District removed two 300,000-gallon Redwood tanks, replacing them with two 300,000-gallon steel bolted tanks. In 2018, the Park District was awarded a $5 million grant, $4 million for upgrades to the water treatment plant and system. $1 million was for the renovation of the visitor center. So the project for the water treatment plant began on January 2020 with replacement of 54 isolation valves ranging from 1 inch to 6 inches. Due to COVID-19, the project was delayed by 1 month. The crews were able to get back on schedule while the park was closed due to the park closure that we had actually through the shelter in place order. And as you can see, it was pretty extensive of what they had to do, excavating and getting down into the valves themselves and do a lot of work finding them. Here, the installation of the raw water line and transmission lines. Crews replaced the new raw water line and transmission line, installing high density polyethylene pipe with welded joints to allow better flexibility when we have ground movement. So going away from the old transite pipe and using a plastic pipe, it's better for the future, economical, and hopefully a little better than dealing with the hazmats that we currently have with the transite. Excuse me. New added features, a raw water bypass. This was added to the system. It's a standpipe by the boat ramp to where if the raw water pumps were to fail, that we can add a line here and run a pump out to the lake, a portable pump, to where we can still make water or pump water back to the water treatment plant. And then to the right there, the picture, there's a caged area there. There's 8 new air release valves that were installed park-wide to minimize air trapped in the water system. Another added feature here was a loop distribution pipeline. This feature was added to tie in the east side transmission line, loop system for the east side transmission line, excuse me, to allow isolation if we had a break on the east side of the park, that we could still pump water into the west side tank and still supply water to the park. So that's a really big feature. Before, if you had a line break, you almost had to shut the whole park down. So it's a really good thing to have moving forward. The water treatment plant building renovation. This work was started after the replacement of the valves. The grading and the deconstruction of fencing around the water treatment plant has been done, as you can see here in the pictures. And the focus now of the project is to move on the system upgrades to the water treatment plant. And this project will run through the summer and hopefully have a projected date of ending December of 2020 with the completion of the whole project. And that's my update, and thank you. Any questions?
Questions from the board, Dennis?
Just fantastic work. It's great to see these improvements occurring. I think I was around in 1975 when we were pulling lines and dragging things all around that park, trying to make it a real park. And God forbid, it's been said a million times, the state hasn't given us a penny, and we've done an excellent job of keeping it going. But thankfully, we got that $5 million, and thankfully, we're going to have an excellent park for another 50 years at least, I hope. And another question. So are the quagga mussel inspections occurring at Lake Chabot?
We're currently not doing the quagga at Lake Chabot yet. We started implementing the procedures. Everything was sent out to all the inspection stations. So we're consistent across the board with our procedures. Also with the signage is set up. We're going to implement that through the phase 2 approach, the July 20th, excuse me. And going through that, I'll be working with the concession and Tiffany to make sure that we get the inspections implemented correctly.
Excellent, thank you.
Director Wieskamp.
Can, at Del Val, I'll start with that because that is one of the, and Shadow Cliffs. If you're going to do reservation type things of allowing them in, can they do it several weeks in advance so that different people have an opportunity to make it in?
You're talking about for the camping reservations?
Yeah.
I'm working right now with reservations, Tiffany and Shannon Punt, and setting up what sites will be available. That's a Tiffany question on how they're gonna implement who or how it gets distributed through the system. Typically it is through the Reserve America, but I can't answer that question, but I can find out and get back to you on that.
Okay, and on the camping, not using the cabins, if a family wanted to use it, why is that unacceptable?
Could you repeat the question, please?
The cabins that we have out there, if a family wishes to be there, family only, why would that be considered unacceptable under current rules?
Well, currently with the new cleaning procedures that we have implemented for only the restrooms as in the
it would be hard to clean. Okay.
It's another added task for the crew to do. So we're trying to balance what we can achieve.
You're ready to answer that because some people are going to want to know.
Yeah, it's one of the choices we had to make, and until we figure out how everything flows and if it can be achievable, that's where we can start lifting things.
I question you, but somebody else might who wants it, so you better be prepared with your answer. That's all.
Well, the other issue too is open air is to keep people from being in a confined space with those cabins or confined space to where if there was a transmission of COVID-19, my understanding is open air is the best thing to be in. And so therefore camping and open air camping, whether in a tent or, outside, rather than being stuck in a building where it's more confined. So I think it's healthier to be outside, but we'll work through this.
We all believe it's healthier to be outside some of the time. Thanks.
Steve, did you want to pipe in there?
Yeah, I was just going to add into that. So as we were initially talking about with, Pete DeQuincy earlier, remember, this is just a starting phase. We're just going to, try it out, see how things work, get all the staff trained up to make sure that they are able to do the jobs complete. One of the things that's happening at Del Val now is that we do have a fairly new staff that's out there. And so learning all these new processes and procedures as we put this all in place is going to take some time. And we want to make sure that we're doing this very successfully. And that's going to aid into determining if and when we can open up the cabins on that one. So it's going to be at a gradual to make sure that we're not doing too much all at once to keep staff and the public safe.
Great. Fabulous. So my question is, when's Shelley's last day?
September something.
Yikes. End of an era there.
Yes, it is.
Great report. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Cool. Seeing none. Thank you very much. We are now at number 7. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comments?
Yes, we have 2. We have one that is live that Ruby Management Analyst will be introducing, and then I'll have one that was sent via email.
Great. Uh,
Everyone, we have a public comment coming in from Kelly Abreu. I just entered him in from our waiting room. Kelly, I have unmuted you, so when you're ready,
Comments.
can
Hi.
speak. I'm going to be setting a timer for 3 minutes.
We have one.
Well, that will be the end of public comments.
Hi. And let
That was sent via email.
me turn off my other thing.
Great.
Here. All right. Yeah, I'm calling about putting in a comment about the assurances that were given for Mission Peak. We've been receiving assurances for a very long time, maybe a year, about the lease renewal and the process that was well underway. Of course, now we're hearing from the city that COVID-19 somehow scuttled all those negotiations and they had stopped at the beginning of the year. That's what the city says, we don't know. But we do know that scheduled meetings of the liaison committee, they lapsed for the last 15 months. 15 months of meeting lapses, and that leaves us with a lot of expectations that were set on the part of staff, on the part of two agencies, telling us that all of these things were well under control, well in hand, and people were talking with one another. And when you look at what's happening here on the agendas of this meeting and every other meeting, we see that the 25-year lease expires on July 7. And it seems like all the agencies and all the meetings and all the agendas, everyone is playing a game of chicken with the expiration of the lease. It's, you know, that's the game where you drive down two cars head on at one another and you see what happens. The board would have to approve any change in operations at the main entrance after that date. The operations committee has not publicly agendized the lease. There's been no discussion of transferring operational control to another agency. It seems like we're going headlong into the uncertainty here. The park operations and land ownership have to change, and they cannot be changed you can't fly by the seat of the pants. The board is tasked with giving guidance to staff regarding major changes in regional park operations and operating control. Staff should announce a plan of action ahead of time and not decide at midnight. The board should review that plan and the board should be giving guidance. The public should have an opportunity to comment on the status of the expiration of whatever happens on July 8th, whatever that is that we don't know. Whether there is any operation, whether there's changes to the grazing operations, whether there are plans for expanding the parking lot. The district needs to be transparent and timely in its planning, should have planning, you know, in advance. There should be some open dialogue. The public's expectations were reasonable and they were set by your statements, your assurances. You assured us that we would have liaison committee meetings for the last 15 months. That didn't happen. Many assurances have been made and broken. They need to be met. And, you know, a good time to start would be before July 7th, before the lease expires. You know, what are we doing here? Is there any planning?
Abreu, your 3 minutes are up.
Okay, thank you. And I believe we have an email.
Yes, we do. This was received via email and it comes from Michael Wheeler. The subject is Canyon Bridge. There are two main routes for cyclists to ride to and from the East Bay to Contra Costa. One is via Grizzly Peak or Spruce in Berkeley to Wildcat Canyon and Camino Pablo. The other is via the Canyon Bridge to Moraga. Currently, the Canyon Bridge is closed Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Construction of the new bridge has an estimated completion date of December 2021. It is common knowledge among the cycling community that there is a bypass around the Canyon Bridge. The bypass is currently closed with a section of chain link fence across the trail entrance. The west end of the Lafayette/Moraga Regional Trail starts across the street from the Via Vista staging area on Canyon Road. As you follow the trail east, the trail splits with the main paved part of the trail going to the bridge. The other part of the trail, which is dirt, goes left and exits onto Augusta Drive in Moraga, adjacent to the last house which is 951 Augusta Drive. Google Maps indicates that this dirt trail is part of the Lafayette Moraga Regional Trail. It would be a real benefit for the cycling community if you would open the Lafayette Moraga Trail and allow us to use the bypass. Losing a major access to from Contra Costa is a big deal, especially considering the amount of time that the bridge will be closed. Riding along Grizzly Peak has its own problems, mostly due to the volume of car and motorcycle traffic and the speed at which many of those drivers are going. I hope that you can find a way to grant us access to the bridge bypass. Thank you.
Great. I know that bridge very well. We'll have staff take a look at it. I don't even know if that path to Augusta Drive is our property.
No, I think it's both private property and potentially East Bay mud property. So yeah. It's not a legal or official bypass. Yeah. So we'll respond to Mr. Wheeler.
Great. Thank you. Any other public comments?
That is it for public comments.
Great. Any board comments?
There should be a response to Mr. Abreu.
Yes, I think we don't have to do it right this minute.
Sure.
Director Waspy.
Yeah, well, I was, with all the doom and gloom in the world, I was going to give some good things to say today, but I don't think I need to. This was a great meeting. All of the great stuff that all staff's doing and of all of our concessionaires and a lot of good news today, a lot of great things. Yeah. But I did want to mention that I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Land and Water Conservation Fund was passed by the Senate this morning. And that is an incredible milestone. I won't get into it, but it's $900 million per year in perpetuity, unless it gets better than that, for land and water conservation, and we've been a beneficiary of that many, many years ago. But in the past, it would trickle out at the whim and will of the Congress. Now it's a guaranteed, as I understand it, and it'll need to pass the House and be signed by the president. But I'm confident it will be. So that's a big day. Also, compliments the park staff. We keep talking about saying that all the time, but I'm seeing people running around like busy little beavers, and it's amazing. Yesterday in my backyard, I saw this monster working in my backyard, and there were no human beings around it. And it was the training for the remote control mower or the mowers, plural, we bought. It's this big giant thing that munches up everything in its way, creates great fire breaks, creates great everything, and it keeps people out of poison oak and terrible brush. And staff was training on that and learning how to use it effectively and safely. And I was amazed at that. And this morning in my backyard, there were those crazy fuels crew kids just tearing the heck out of the fuel break along the 10 Hills Trail and around public safety. It's amazing the work that's getting done throughout all this insanity, for lack of a better word. But congratulations to the folks getting back and doing the jobs that they want to do.
Yeah, I second that. So yes, my compliments to the staff. This is a great report, and that's good news. The Supreme Court overall has been a pleasant surprise the last week. So, so with that, thank you for everything, and everyone, please stay safe, and we will see you at the next meeting.
Next Zoom.
Next Zoom. Thank you. And special thank you to Ruby and Denise.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Hey, Jim, check your notes, your chat notes.
Yeah, no, I'll give you a call.
Oh, okay.